expand this business conversation today to the state of the state governments. Of course, the IMF Article 4 consultation report, the last one we got a couple of months ago, pointed at the fiscal deficit of subnationals, the state government. So it's no longer news that more than a dozen state governments are owing salaries. Infrastructure money is coming very difficult. The money from Abuja, where I am, where the seat of the government is drying up gradually. So there have been warnings from the Ministry of Finance and the Debt Office that the party is over. The days of sharing monies from the federal may no longer be there. Of course, we know the story around the price of oil and the oil market generally around the world. So the state governments have to begin to look inward to dig out of recession by digging more money out of what they can get. It's called the revenue. So the Nigeria Governors Forum says they have some new thinking and want to be part of the conversation to get the states. So that's the forum for all the 36 state governors. They got to put heads together and remove part of the headache that the Buhari's administration has as the godfather. The man who is sitting there here is Nabina David, who is an economist, and we're part of the NGF. Good morning. It's good to have you.
Good morning, Bosun. Thanks for having me.
The states are not in a very good shape. Do we all agree with that?
Well, things are improving. And I would say that
things are not improving.
Things are improving.
At the state level?
Yes.
Well, let's start from there. Who is improving? Who is paying salaries regularly?
Well, let's put this in context. I would say the revenue environment at the state level is rapidly changing. And from where we were in 2015 and where we're going to, I think there are reforms taking shape. The recent fiscal crisis has been a trigger. It has come with its own risks, but there are some positives. And I can tell you that.
Where are the positives?
If we look at, let's look at the supply side to start with. The oil price crash, it came with its own effect. You know, revenues to states declined significantly from around 2.7 trillion in 2014 to around 1.6 trillion in 2016. That's a high cry from what it was previously. So that's like over 40% decline. And the impact was obvious. The impact was that the revenues to states couldn't really sustain day-to-day obligations, salary payments and all that. Infrastructure funds contracted over the time. And we also saw debts increasing and debt servicing increasing as well. But the reform environment is taking shape. At least in the last year, we've seen the IGR of states increase from over 687 billion to 821. So in 2015, we had a contraction, a 3% contraction cumulatively for the 36 states. But in 2016, we saw progress, which was about 20%. It's the highest we've recorded in recent times. So we see that the reform environment at the state level is taking shape. And as state governments put in place reforms that, you know, restructure their revenue authorities, we see results coming. And the impact, of course, at the end of it is that states become fiscally sustainable, budgets are better shaped, they are better planned for, they are credible. And we are looking at the point where we would want to see states being able to pay salaries, pensions, recurrent expenditure from recurrent revenue. And some states are making inroads in this.
The critical part of the conversation that the man on the streets would want to see is for states to build critical infrastructure, create jobs. What do you think the forum, when governors sit together, they call the NGF, so it is good to have you here for the first time ever. You're the first one I'm going to bite with this one. When 36 state governors sit together, what do they really discuss at the NGF?
Well, Bosun, let me first state that there are two arms of the NGF. There's the arm of the 36 governors and the arm of the policy arm, which I work for. The policy arm is the Nigeria Governors Secretariat. Our job is to provide administrative, research, and technical guidance to the governors. And they meet monthly to discuss issues of common interest, issues of national importance. And, of course, fiscal sustainability is one of the paramount issues and that they discuss on a regular basis. IGR is a critical part of that, and it has been part of our agenda for the last 1 year. States they understand the importance of raising revenue, and they've been making critical reforms in recent times.
A number of Nigerians will believe that state governors, 36 of you, are the key problem Nigeria has. Yes or no?
No.
Really?
No. Bosun, in the last
36 states, you guys come to Abuja every month, and you shared FAC, federal allocation, and folks don't seem to see the end of that money. Why is that so?
So from where we were before, from where we were previously, I think there's a progress. So if you want to measure governance in the last 3 years, I think we've had progress. And if we look at some states, we have key examples. We have Lagos, we have Ogun State. We even have states that were underdogs previously showing good performance. I give you Benue State. They've been able to raise their revenues by over 100% in the last 1 year.
The folks are still complaining, Benue State in particular. And it's good you mentioned that. Salaries haven't been paid, a number of other issues coming from that state. You think that state is better?
It's better than it was, years ago. We see Kwara, for example, as well. Let me give you how it works. Let me give you a picture of how it works. Previously, states, they plan for recurrent revenue. They know what they want to spend. And the rest of it, it puts for capital expenditure. And over time, it hasn't been sustainable because the costs of paying salaries was too much to even cover costs for capital projects.
So state government should lay off some people and move them into the private sector. Well, why not?
Those are the conversations we can have with the private sector to see the big picture. There are reforms that need to be carried out, but it wouldn't take place immediately. There are engagements that we need to hold with the private sector, with the civil service to ensure that there's a smooth transition. Definitely there are pressures from salaries and pensions, which put a lot of pressure on the overall budget of the states. And these are conversations that we need to have ongoing to help shape the fiscal sustainability of states.
What is the NGF thinking and doing right now as we begin to dig out of recession?
The IGR, for example, that has raised enough revenues from states. And the spending, of course, has shaped the aggregate demand of the economies of the states. So whether you talk about consumption or investment or government expenditure, we've been seeing progress. And the reforms at the fiscal level, PFM, rationalizing public expenditure, improving revenues, and also other debt management reforms are yielding results. And that is why we're seeing some progress in our GDP.
How much more do you think the Governors Forum can do in becoming more fiscal responsible and be more accountable, try to cut their coat according to their size?
Well, there are three instruments I think we can use.
Because people think governors live a flamboyant lifestyle while the rest of the state, of the people, have the stick end of the carrot.
Well, that's the perception, and that's what we need to work on daily. But there are three instruments I think we can work on. One is collective action. The governors need to come together to decide, and they need to make commitments as to where they want to go in the next couple of years. And there's also the importance of peer learning. There are a number of states that are doing well in some of these areas. They've been more fiscally sustainable. The budget, the performance, the credibility of the fiscal environment, transparency is taking shape. We can also exchange those lessons across other states to ensure that state actors also understand what's happening. In the past, we had states that worked isolatedly. They did not know what happened in other states. But now we are beginning to see examples of states that are doing well, and we have the opportunity to replicate these good practices across other states.